So, Doug, what is your favorite movie you worked on?
Thank you, Theo, for asking me. Um, wow, that's a good question. That's a difficult one because there's so many movies I've worked on and I've enjoyed so many of them.
Yeah,
But my favorite movie, well, I don't know. I mean, the last one I worked on is one of my favorites, and that was The Batman.
I heard you got nominated.
Yeah, I
Have you
got
ever been,
it's.
so,
Yeah, I've never been nominated for an Oscar before, but a lot of people I know have, so I've seen it from afar.
yeah, do you know what the BAFTAs are?
Yes, I know what the BAFTAs are. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were not nominated for a BAFTA, but we were nominated for an AMPS award, which is a British award given by the sound experts in Britain, which was great. So
Cool.
we got a sound expert seal of approval, which is great.
Yeah.
But so there are other films that I've enjoyed working on too. Going back, my favorite films are probably uh, maybe going back. There's the We Own the Night, which is a James Gray directed movie about cops in New York City, and there's a great chase scene and
It's
some
cool.
fun scenes of action, but also drama. It's very good.
Yeah. What's it
Um,
called?
we Own the Night.
Yeah, 'cause I know who James Gray
Oh,
is.
you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's made a lot of movies.
hmm
His most recent one is Armageddon Time.
Cool.
Yeah.
And, did you actually interact with anyone on the set? And if so, who?
Right. Well, on that film, on the Batman, they shot it in England, and I didn't go to England during the shoot, so I didn't interact on the set with anybody. But after the movie is shot and edited, and sometimes you discover that certain lines of dialogue are unclear for whatever technical reason, so you have to bring the actors into the studio and record those lines again to get them well, so you can hear them and understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
So we had Robert Pattinson come in to the studio, and I worked with him and with Zoe Kazan. No, Zoe Kravitz, not Zoe Kazan. Zoe Kravitz, and also with Paul Dano, who was not in the studio with me, but on the other end of a Zoom call. So we talked about his. My job in those situations is to help the actors get the sound that will match in with what they were doing on the day they recorded the scene on location. So, so we have to, partly technical and partly performance, and the director's there, and it was, really fun to meet those people and work on those scenes with them. Yeah, Robert Pattinson's a very talented guy.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So I was. How did you get approached about a very unlucky leprechaun?
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's a funny story.
Yeah.
Well, so my wife is Irish, and we
Yep.
and our kids, we were living in Berkeley, California, and
Yeah.
we wanted to. I've been looking for a job in Ireland because we wanted to bring the kids over there
Yeah.
and have them spend time in Ireland and meet their grandparents, and I mean, not that they hadn't met them, but to actually spend time living in Ireland near their grandparents, and I could possibly get a job over there on a movie. So I got a job offer to go work at a place called Ardmore Sound, which was brand new sound post production facility
Yeah.
just outside of Dublin, where her parents lived, and and so I started working at this place, and we built a new mix room uh, around the same time that this place was working, getting going.
Yeah.
Roger Corman started a new studio in Ireland
Yep.
called Concord Inish.
Yes.
And so that studio was in what they call the Gaeltacht, which is where they speak Irish
Yeah.
and as their first language, not English.
Yeah.
And so the government gave them all kinds of tax incentives to build the studio, and so they did, and they hired a lot of Irish people to work on them, and he made this Irish themed movie,
Yeah.
A Very Unlucky Leprechaun,
Yep.
which starred Warwick Davis,
Yes.
who had been was an actor. He's a little person who had played a character in the movie Willow.
Yes, I know who he is.
Yeah. So Willow, made him a star basically.
Yeah.
And so he was the star of this movie. He plays a leprechaun.
Yeah.
Anyway, they shot the movie and they wanted to do the sound. So they shot the movie in Ireland, and in order to get the full tax break, they had to do the sound in Ireland. And so they wanted us to do the sound. So they made a deal, which was, like, we couldn't afford to do jobs for as little as they were offering. They were offering an absurdly low amount of money for the job.
Yeah.
But we took it because we wanted to build up a track record for this new studio.
Yeah.
And so we took the job, and I was in charge of making sure the sound was good, and I mixed the sound too in the new studio. Anyway, and the director was an Irishman, and so I worked with him, and the funny part was just that we did it for almost no money at all. It was so inexpensive.
Yes.
But it turned out fine, and it was the beginning of our work there.
And also, I had more questions about the Leprechaun. Do you know how much the film costed?
Overall, I have no idea, but it was very inexpensive. The sound budget was probably, I think it was something like $30,000. I mean, it was like, that's like nothing. It was nothing then. And now it's even less.
Yeah, Roger Corman films typically cost $100,000 to $1 million.
Yeah, I'm sure this was on the lower end of that scale. Yeah. I mean, probably the most expensive part was paying the actors.
Yeah.
And then, because the crew were all just getting going, they were young, Irish people, and we were a young company, and so we did it for very little money.
And I also wanted to mention that I also like a lot of the martial arts actors. There's this guy called Don the Dragon Wilson. He made a film in Ireland that was part of a series called Blood Fist.
Oh.
Blood Fist 8, Hard Way Out.
That's the Irish one?
Yep.
And was it set in Ireland or just shot in Ireland?
It was just shot in Ireland because he had founded the studio at the time to make his films there.
Right.
But when Roger Corman was in Ireland, he occasionally did shoot on location.
Right. Well, a lot of The Very Unlucky Leprechaun was shot on location.
Yep.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
What did you think?
I thought it was a fun little B movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I have another question. This question's kind of already been answered, but did you have to go to Ireland to be near the film set, or did you go to a sound studio?
Right. Well, I mean, we had talked about it. They built a special studio in Ireland, and I was in Ireland already when we did the work. So I just stayed home in Ireland, and we were there for 4 years as a family. And during that time, I worked on a number of different movies, and that was one of the first.
Yes.
So we were in Ireland, and it was good fun. I enjoyed that.
That's really cool. And also, for Fly Away Home, were there geese real, or were they sound effects?
Well, that's a good question. So, Fly Away Home is the great movie about the geese. I guess their mother or their parents die somehow. I forget how. Yeah. And then these little geese, apparently, they don't know how to migrate unless they have their parents show them. And so the girl takes her little ultralight plane and leads them to the migration land. So it's a very interesting little story. Yeah. And the geese, I mean, all of the geese are real geese sound that we recorded. I shouldn't say all. So some of the geese were recorded live when they were acting in the movie. They're real geese in the movie. And then some of them, most of them, we put the voices of the geese in post-production. So in the sound editing, we edited in goose sounds. In fact, that was my job on that movie, was to put goose sounds in all the geese. And like the little baby geese, and then they get a little older. So we had to goose sounds from the tiniest level up to adult, and we had lots of geese sounds.
Yeah, they shot that in Canada. Toronto.
Right.
In the Toronto area. Ontario.
Right. There's a big film scene near Toronto, yeah.
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 And they also shot it in Maryland.
Okay, right. I think, is it set in Maryland? I forget where it's set.
But I think besides Canada and Maryland, they had shot Fly Away Home in some other locations.
Okay, right. Well, I know that they shot a lot of geese flying in the air and on the ground, and, a lot of the shots of the ultralight were actually the ultralight in the air, shot from another ultralight or the same ultralight that the girl is in and that sort of thing. So, a lot of really good shooting in that movie.
Because, do you know who... that's the next question. Do you know who Frank Welker is?
I do know who Frank Welker is.
Cool.
We worked with him on a movie that I did the sound for called Katie in the end. No, it was called Katie in the beginning, but when it was released, they called it Born to be Wild.
Yeah.
And it's a movie about a gorilla.
Yes.
And Frank Welker, we hired him to do gorilla sounds for the movie because we didn't have any good gorilla sounds.
Yeah.
And, it had to be making certain emotional sounds, like sad sounds and angry sounds. And he's a well-known voice talent who I think he may still be working. He was the last time I checked a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He's very old, but he's very, very good at doing these amazing creature sounds and animal sounds and roars. And you name it, he can do it. Yeah, he's cool. Fantastic. Really talented guy.
Oh, and before we continue...
Yeah, what do you
Royal
got?
Oaks Entertainment.
Okay.
Another obscure B company that I like.
Okay. And what do you like about them?
They do action, erotic thrillers, and family films. Many of their action films have footage from other bigger budget movies.
Are you serious?
It's what's called stock footage.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, Royal Oaks Entertainment. The one film, it was Phoenician. Now, this guy named Andrew Stevens, he ran Royal Oaks Entertainment. Yeah, Andrew Stevens, I played him in the Studio 29 tour video.
Okay, right.
Andrew Stevens, his film Agent Red, which stars Dolph Lundgren, they completed the film and they turned it into him, and he said, "This is unwatchable, we cannot release this film." So he fired the director, Damian Lee, and he rehired another director named Jim Wynorski to direct reshoots. And they distributed the film anyway, even though they had problems on the set.
Right. Wow.
Yep.
It's funny.
And number 8.
It's hard making a movie, basically. That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
Yeah.
About Ice Age, The Meltdown, were you in the recording studio because it's an animated film? Yeah.
Well, so I actually did take a trip to where they made the movies. I'm trying to remember where it was.
Blue Sky?
Yeah. Yeah, that was out here on the East Coast. I was living in the Bay Area, San Francisco area.
Cool.
And we were doing the sound there at Lucas's place called Skywalker Sound. And they flew us out to visit them in Connecticut, thank you. We took a tour of the studio where they were doing the work and everything, and then we flew back. But I never really watched them. Like, I wasn't with them when they were shooting the animated footage.
Yeah.
But we did meet them there and have a really nice visit with them on their home turf. And then we flew back, and we started working on the movie, and that was a really fun movie. The director of that, Carlos
Saldana.
Yes, who is Brazilian, and did a number of films for Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Incredibly talented guy, incredibly friendly, nice guy. Like, he had every single shot, like, was up here in his head. He knew every single detail about it, like how long it was, if it was a close shot or what happened in it, what sound he wanted for that. He was an amazing resource. He was so amazing. Really, like a brain like no others I ever met.
On the topic of Blue Sky, did you know COVID shut them down?
I heard that, but I didn't. I heard that they've shut down, but I didn't know that that was why. Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I heard that they shut down. Yeah, they were bought by Fox.
Yeah.
Right after that movie came out, or was it right before? Right
Actually,
around the time
first
the movie.
Ice Age. Fox bought Blue Sky.
Okay, before we worked on it, after the first Ice Age came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the second Ice Age movie.
Yeah.
And it was we had to deal with Fox on that, and not just Blue Sky. And so it was, more complicated. You have a lot of executives who all have their opinions. And anyway, yeah.
And actually, before I get to the next question, this movie you worked on is a little bit more obscure, but I happen to own it on VHS. It's called Blood and Wine.
Oh my God, you are a real connoisseur of esoteric movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was working on that film like?
Well, that was Bob Rafelson movie.
Yes.
And Bob Rafelson was like a superstar of the alternative direction of the late 60s and
yes.
and 70s.
The reason why Jeremy Thomas, the producer from Recorded Picture Company, chose him to direct the film is because he had the feel of a European director.
Yeah, okay. I think that film does have a kind of European feel, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was not a popular hit or anything.
Yeah, Fox Searchlight.
It was, but it was a really good film. Jack Nicholson is in it, and Stephen Dorff.
Yes, it was one of his earlier films.
Yeah, it was, I think I worked on his first film, Stephen Dorff.
Yeah.
Which was called SFW.
Cool.
And he was good in...
So fucking what?
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
Yes, that's what it's the acronym of. Anyway, yeah, that was an interesting movie because the picture editor, who I knew from another film or two before, Deep Rising was one of them.
Yeah.
And he got a really bad cold during the editing of the film. Yeah. And Michael Caine plays a role in that movie, and he's dying of some kind of lung disease, and so he's coughing all the time. So Steve said he took 2 weeks off work at one point because he was so sick. He told me to come over with my microphone and record him coughing because he thought he sounded like he was dying, and he did. He was great. So when Michael Caine he's an actor, but he couldn't cough like he was dying. So he would go, and then I took these sounds from Stephen
Dorff.
No, the picture editor's name was Stephen. I can't remember it. Anyway, he had these really disgustingly sick-sounding coughs, which I recorded and we put in for Michael Caine. Yeah,
but back to you. How did you discover Skywalker sound?
Well, I mean, everybody knows about George Lucas, and I lived in San Francisco and then in Berkeley. When he made Star Wars, he didn't have a company, but he owned the rights to the movie. Yeah. Fox got the rights from showing that movie. Yeah. They funded it. But they said it was too expensive, so he cut his rate, and in exchange for keeping all the ancillary rights, so for future movies, for all the characters, for all the remake rights, and the toys and everything. And when that movie was such a huge success, he became one of the wealthiest people in the country.
And actually, Royal Oaks, Andrew Stevens was one of the original auditioneers for Luke Skywalker.
Oh, really? Oh,
yep.
So he was an actor, too.
Yeah, and he's actually the son of Stella Stevens from the Poseidon Adventure.
Okay, right.
Yep, which she actually gave birth to him when she was only 16.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Interesting stuff. So anyway, George had so much money that he bought this big ranch and built a facility that was like his dream facility, and that became Skywalker Sound. And before then, he had the sound department in a warehouse in San Rafael, and they called that Sprocket Systems.
Yeah.
So that was before Skywalker. So anyway, I had worked at Sprocket Systems, and I knew that Skywalker was coming, that they were going to change the name. They actually changed it from Sprocket Systems to Lucas Digital. and then from Lucas Digital to Skywalker Sound, which is by far the best name, I think. And then they, so I worked there for 5 years. I had worked on a couple of jobs before then for them. I heard about them, in the Bay Area. It's hard not to hear about them because they were a big local hiring company for people who do sound work like me.
And
so everybody was talking about them.
Oh, and there's also another company called Majestic Films. They did the foreign sales on Into the West as well as Blood and Wine.
Okay.
Dean, I was going to ask if you knew how the foreign sales on a film worked.
Well, I mean, I know that they're a big part of getting the film made in many cases. Like a lot of times films get sold to a lot of different distributors internationally.
Yes.
And then with the promised money, they can borrow money from the bank.
Yeah.
And then shoot the movie, and then deliver the movie to all these different distributors around the world, and they pay them up front some money. They pay off the loan from the bank, and they keep whatever profit they get to make. And then as the movie keeps getting shown, if it's successful, they get more money, because they keep paying more after its initial front-end payment.
Yeah, and...
So that's all I know, though. I don't know how... I don't know. I know they do a lot of sales at Cannes.
Yeah.
And other international film festivals, things like that.
Yeah, Overseas Film Group is another foreign sales company.
Okay, right.
Yeah, which their logo is like a circle with these shapes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
is it animated?
CGI.
Okay, yeah.
And I was trying to think of another foreign sales company, one that has distributed either big films or indie. Sales.
There's a movie company in France that funds a lot of filmmaking called Band Apart.
Yeah.
Which was the name of a Jean-Luc Godard movie.
Yeah.
And it's the name of this company. And they funded a number of James Gray movies.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, partially funded. Like, they were part of the foreign sales.
Yeah, and which,
It's a key part of making a movie, is the foreign sales. Like Avatar, the new Avatar, apparently, they spent a lot of time making sure that it was going to appeal to Chinese sensibilities and that it wouldn't need to be censored by the government so that it could show in China and be popular. And that's been one of its biggest markets. It's made record amounts of money. And part of that, a big part of that was from foreign sales, especially China.
Yes, and Majestic Films, their job on Into the West. Little Bird, another company that made Into the West with Gabriel Byrne.
Right.
Yeah, which their logo is a bird that looks more like a fish.
Uh-huh.
Majestic Film, a lot of movies made by Little Bird were sold by Majestic Films, including one with Albert Finney called A Man of No Importance.
Uh-huh, right.
That was sold by Majestic Films and produced by Little Bird.
So Little Bird was an English-Irish company or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it had funding from England, but it was started by an Irish guy.
Jonathan Cavendish, I'm not sure if he's English or Irish.
Yeah, he sounds English.
Yeah.
With a name like that. Yeah.
But about another thing about sales, The Man Without a Face with Mel Gibson was also sold by Majestic Films.
Uh-huh.
And that was made by his company Icon.
Right.
Yeah, so I think they were like a sales agent for certain companies.
So where is Majestic located?
Britain.
Uh-huh. Right.
And their logo is like a crown with a star.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny because I got to know a little bit about some of the English companies because a lot of the Irish films that I worked on when we were there were co-funded by English companies. And so, yeah. But I'm mostly, there's a lot of great English film production companies and sales companies. And
for M-Shell, how did they approach you about doing sound effects on the Ernest films?
Oh my God, M-Shell was so great. So the company M-Shell, I guess they were, the director and the writer were based in Nashville.
Yeah.
And the producer lived in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they got together, but they had been working together. I think they did commercials,
Yeah.
among other things. And one of their most successful commercials was the Jim Varney character, Ernest.
Yeah.
And so Ernest, everybody loved Ernest. And so they said, why don't we make a movie about Ernest? And so they made Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yeah.
And I didn't work on that, but so they were looking for an inexpensive place to do the sound, but they wanted the sound to play a big role, so they wanted a creative company. So they went to the place where I was working called the Saul Zaentz Film Center in Berkeley, where they had made all these great movies like Amadeus and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and English Patient and so on.
You did the English Patient.
I worked on that, yes I did.
What sound did you do?
I did the sound for many of the reels. The movie's divided up into reels which are about 20 minutes long. Yeah. And so I think there were 3 sound effects editors on it, or maybe 2. There were 2 main sound effects editors and a third person. So I took like half the reels.
Yeah.
And Kirsten Camolio took the other half of the reels, and we each cut. So I cut like every other reel, and so I cut the first reel and the third reel, and So I worked on the plane at the beginning that gets shot down. I don't know if you've seen the film.
It's kind of a longer movie, so
yeah,
I'm not sure if I could sit through a longer film.
Okay, right. So there's some great scenes in it. There's a couple battle scenes, and then there's a lot of scenes set in Cairo, and you get the marketplaces and the British hotels and and then they go off on an expedition in the desert. So there's a sandstorm, and there are camels, and jeeps driving in deep sand, and all kinds of interesting sound effects in that movie. Yeah, it's a very sad romantic film. Yeah. It's quite a good film, but yeah, it is longer. Yeah. Yeah.
The VHS there was a copy that was 1 tape and a copy that was 2 tapes.
Oh my God, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess I don't know how VHS works. Like if you put it on thinner tape to fit more into the cartridge, it probably doesn't last as long. Like they would do that with cassette tapes and audio tapes too. Like if you put it on low quality thin tape, you can put more into the cassette, but it will eventually break or get tangled up or fail. So yeah, that's a problem. So do you mostly collect VHS?
I like both VHS and DVD, but I also like VHS.
Uh-huh. And do you watch movies regularly?
Sometimes, which on our own, the song that plays at the end of the movie, "We Got Each Other" by the Osmond Boys.
Uh-huh.
I love it so much that the last time I watched it, I rewound it to that bit and then I ejected it.
Uh-huh. So you could watch it again next time.
Yeah.
Right, that's great. So I don't know that song. I have to hear it. It's probably on Spotify or something.
No, it's actually from the ad for Studio 29. It plays into the credits.
Okay, right. I can see it there.
Yep.
Right. That's great. You're quite the expert on a lot of these companies and knowing their logos and everything too. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I also saw you were director of photography on a short.
When I was in film school, I worked. I shot a few movies, including one for a friend called Liar's Dice. Is that the one?
Yes.
Right. So Liar's Dice is actually a feature film. I think it's about 90 minutes long, or maybe not quite, but it's a feature length, I think.
And I had one more question.
Yeah.
I don't have my phone is actually in another room charging.
Okay.
But did you work on any did you start sound on films in the 80s or the 90s?
In the 80s.
What were some of the first films you worked on, sound-wise?
The very first feature film that I worked on was called On the Edge.
I might...
There's several films with that same title. This one stars Bruce Dern and Pam Grier.
Yes.
And it's He's an older cross-country runner who is, I can't remember exactly. He's like he lives on his own and he's kind of sick and tired of life, but he gets back into running again, and he wins this big race, this cross-country race.
On the Edge with Bruce Stern and who else?
Pam Grier.
Yes, I know who that is.
Yeah, and there's some other people, but they're the stars.
Yeah, what year was that film?
Well, I worked on it in 1984, and it came out, I think, in 85 or 86, I forget.
Yes, so what films did you do between 85... Sorry if this is a
it's great.
Complicated question. What films did you work on between 85 and 89?
Well, I worked on a couple of the Ernest movies.
Yes. Those were both 80s and 90s.
Yeah. 91 was so then the M. Shell sold the Ernest thing to Disney.
Touchstone.
Touchstone, right. And they produced one movie, which was Ernest Scared Stupid, which came out in the 90s. And then they decided they didn't want to keep going with Ernest. So they sold it back to... Or they gave it back. I don't know how that worked, but...
Yeah, gave the rights back.
To M. Shell. And I worked on a couple others after that. But anyway, I think I worked on 4 or 5 Ernest movies, most of which were in the 80s. I can't remember.
Because actually the last one you did, Ernest Rides Again, was independently distributed. It was only released in one theater.
It was so low budget.
Yeah.
But I love those guys. I wanted to work with them on anything they ever did.
Yeah, Ernest Scared Stupid, the VHS was put out by M. Shell themselves. And they had distribution from a company called Monarch Home Video.
Right.
Who I think might have also been from Tennessee. Wait, you know who Monarch Home... It's okay if you don't, but you know who Monarch Home Video are?
Well, it's a familiar name, but I don't know anything about them.
Monarch Home Video, their logo, when Ernest Rides Again came out, it was just Monarch in blue with a yellow line, and Home Video was underneath. They were a division of a company called Prism Entertainment.
Okay.
And then Monarch, their... current logo has a crown on it.
Okay.
A cloud background.
So they're still going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, those guys found out about the Salzans Film Center and hired the film center to do the first film, Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yeah.
I think they had cut the sound somewhere else and they mixed it in Berkeley. And then... on the next film, they wanted us to do the sound editing and preparation and the mixing. So I was hired to be the sound designer, and another guy was the sound supervisor. So he did the dialogue and was in charge of the budget, and I was in charge of all the sound effects and the sound design for Ernest Saves Christmas.
Yep.
And then we did Ernest Goes to Jail.
Yeah.
Which was my favorite of them.
Oh, yeah.
And then Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yeah.
And then Ernest Rides Again. And then there was one other Ernest movie that I had something to do with. Ernest Goes to School.
Yeah.
And then there was another one after that I didn't work on, but a friend did at the same place.
Was it the one where he goes to Africa?
It might have been that one, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something... I know there's a lot of basketball action in it.
Slam Dunk Ernest.
Oh, that was it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they shot those 3, Ernest Rides Again, Ernest Goes to School, and Slam Dunk Ernest were shot in Vancouver, Canada.
Right, because there's a lot of good film technicians and craftspeople there.
Yep.
Who know how to make movies relatively inexpensively because they do a lot of TV and low-budget films there.
Yes.
And so they're really good at that. And so, anyway, yeah.
And also about Vancouver, Canada, besides the fact they shot Ernest there, the X-Files until season 5 was filmed in Vancouver.
Right. Okay. Yeah, a lot of TV is shot up there.
MacGyver.
Even now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And also about, did you have to go to the UK to record the sound effects on Harry Potter, or did you stay here in America?
I actually went there to work on that film. So I was in London for a little over 3 months, I think, working on it. So we didn't do any work in the U.S. It was all done in London at a facility called Delane Lee.
Yeah.
Right downtown in the middle of London in an area called Soho. So,
cool.
It was really fun. So I loved being in London for that long. You know, you kind of feel like you're a local almost by the end of it. It was so much fun. So yeah, so we did a lot of sound recording there. Uh, we recorded all the voices in London, and we recorded music and sound effects in the area in a lot of different parts of that. Yeah, so they had a place called Leavesden Studios, which is where they shoot
Yeah.
the Harry Potter movies, where they shot them, and that is owned by Warner Brothers. So
Yeah.
we went out there and did some recording, and yeah, it was great.
And what other films did you work on in like 90 early? When I say the early 90s, I mean 1990 to 1993.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ernest Scared Stupid. I worked on Twin Peaks,
Yes.
and I worked on. I think The English Patient was in there
96.
around then. Okay, not then, not that early. Um, golly, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the exact year. So I worked on a movie called Johnny Mnemonic.
95.
Okay,
That has Dolph Lundgren.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He plays this big, strong guy who's out to get the hero,
Yep.
and he doesn't quite make it, but he gets real close.
Yep. They filmed that in Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
Toronto and Montreal, doubling as Tokyo.
That's right. It's a really funny movie in that it's based on a short story, and so they added a lot of stuff to make it into a movie. And the stuff they added, I don't think really helped it. But it's kind of a cult classic.
Yes.
I enjoyed working on that.
And what did you after? I'm trying to think. What other films did you do in Unlucky Leprechaun was 98. What did you do in 99? What films did you do in 99?
Well, so from 1997 until 2001, I lived and worked in Ireland.
Yeah.
So I worked on a movie called The General.
Yeah, with Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah.
Him and John Voight.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was Pierce Brosnan is in it. No, I take it back. He was in another movie by the same director.
The Tailor of Panama.
The Tailor of Panama.
That's one of Daniel Radcliffe's first films.
Okay. God, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah,
he was
but
in
did
it.
they film The Tailor of Panama in Panama?
I don't think so. I think they might have filmed that. I'm trying to remember now. I think they filmed it in like Florida or
Doubling as Panama.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty big budget film, so they had sets and things.
And that director is still alive, John Borman.
He's very old, but he's still alive. He hasn't made a film for a few years, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's got it in him to make another one.
Yeah.
His last film was. He made a film after that, but I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, he's an Irish. He was originally English, but he moved to Ireland and did a lot of films in Ireland.
And where did you live after Ireland? Did you live in London?
We didn't really ever live in London. I did that one job in London. I did some other smaller jobs in London, but mostly I lived in Northern California.
Yeah.
In San Francisco or Berkeley. So when we finished in Ireland, we moved back to Berkeley, and that's when I started. Soon after that, I started working for Skywalker Sound.
Yeah.
And then after I was there for 5 years or so, I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and we lived in L.A. and did the. I worked on a bunch of films there. All the movies with Matt Reeves, Cloverfield,
Yeah.
Let Me In, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, and The Batman.
Yeah.
So those were all actually Cloverfield we did. I worked on. I still lived in Berkeley, but the others were. I was in L.A. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a good. I enjoyed being in L.A. too. L.A.'s a fun, big place.
Yeah.
It's a bit big for most people. Like it's spread out, so you have to drive long distances to get from one place to another.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but it's nice. I like LA.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and then that brings us up to the present moment.
Yeah. And also about where was Fly Away Home? Were Blood and Wine and Fly Away Home mixed at the same studio, or
They were, yeah,
yes.
at this place in Berkeley, the Saul Zaentz Film Center,
Cool.
and that place, they won several Oscars for mixes there. They did The Right Stuff and got an Oscar for Best Sound,
Yeah.
and Amadeus won a Oscar for Best Sound,
Yeah.
and The English Patient won an Oscar for Best Sound.
Yeah.
And I think those are the Oscars they won. So they were pretty well known, for doing great sound work. And we got a lot of smaller films mostly that would come there, like Blood and Wine
Yeah.
and Fly Away Home.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. And Carol Ballard, the director of Fly Away Home, had an office in the building actually. So
Cool.
he did another film called Duma.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
That's a really lovely film. I worked on that too.
Cool.
And I like that film a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you do the sound on Duma? Well, obviously,
Yeah.
Did you do the cheetahs?
Yes, I did. I recorded a bunch of cheetahs, and they are very vocal animals. And so we got a lot of sounds from some cheetahs that were actually not too far away. Somebody had a couple of cheetahs
Yeah.
in a private zoo, which is weird. But anyway, we recorded them.
Yeah, and another thing about Carol Ballard.
Hmm.
Out of all the films he did, my favorite one is The Black Stallion.
Oh my God, that is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's so great. I love that movie.
And they even made a show in 1990 to 1993, the New Adventures of the Black Stallion.
A TV show?
Yep, and Mickey Rooney reprised as well as Henry.
Yeah,
And a new actor played Alex.
right.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that. I worked on a thing called no, it wasn't The Return of the Black Stallion. It was
Young Black Stallion.
Young Black Stallion.
Yeah.
Which was about the progeny of the Black Stallion.
Yep, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Carol Ballard is an amazing director. The Black Stallion is a masterpiece, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And his other film, did you ever see Never Cry Wolf?
Yes.
That is a beautiful film, too.
Yep.
I really like that movie.
Another company that I really love, Anchor Bay, which has the sailboat.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Is that the logo, you mean?
Yeah, Anchor Bay, their logo is a sailboat.
Right, yeah.
They had a Never Cry Wolf DVD because they had a deal with Disney.
Uh-huh.
That ultimately... Yeah, they had a deal, to release more obscure live-action films.
Uh-huh.
In which Anchor Bay, besides the live-action Disney films, the obscure ones,
Right.
the company is also known for distributing cult horror films such as Halloween, The Evil Dead, Hellraiser.
Yeah. Right. I'm sure they must have made a lot of money off all those movies.
And actually, you know what sound system they used frequently? THX.
Oh, right, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's like George Lucas' thing, right. Yeah. The logo sound. Yep.
Oh, and I even also know, besides all the THX have even certified anime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Akira from 1988.
Oh, what a great movie that was.
Yep, Akira that has THX on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's great.
I own the DVD that has THX of Akira. I wanted to say thanks for letting me interview you, Mr. Murray.
Theo, it's been a great pleasure. I really enjoyed it very much.
A great pleasure interviewing
you.
you.
It's so nice to meet you and to hear about your interest in all these wonderful movies and things that you know so much about.
I agree.